The neon glow of the city blurred past the rain-streaked windows as Mark slumped into the back seat of the rideshare, exhaustion weighing his limbs like lead. Another late night at the office, another spreadsheet, another deadline. He barely registered the hum of the engine or the soft jazz playing at a whisper through the speakers. All he wanted was to collapse into bed. "Destination confirmed," the driver said, his voice flat and hollow, like a recording played through old speakers. Mark glanced up, meeting the man's gaze in the rearview mirror. The pale, unblinking eyes locked onto his, sending an involuntary shiver down his spine. The driver didn't blink, didn't smile, just stared. Thanks, Mark muttered, shifting uncomfortably in his seat. He fumbled with his phone, pretending to scroll through emails just to avoid that unsettling gaze. The car lurched forward, gliding too smoothly through the rain-slicked streets. The air inside was frigid unnaturally, so as if the heater had been left off for hours. Mark exhaled, watching his breath mist in front of him. "You mind turning up the heat?" he asked, rubbing his hands together. No response. The driver's grip on the wheel didn't waver, his posture rigid. Mark frowned. "Hey man, you good?" Still nothing. Just those eyes, flicking back to the mirror every few seconds, watching. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. The jazz music faded into static, then cut out entirely, leaving only the rhythmic thump of the windshield wipers. Mark's pulse quickened. Something was wrong. He leaned forward, peering at the driver's seat. The man's hands were bone white, fingers curled too tightly around the wheel. His reflection in the mirror was too still, too perfect, like a mannequin propped up in the front seat. Mark's throat tightened. "Pull over." The driver didn't react. I said, "Pull over." The car sped up instead, slicing through a red light without slowing. The city lights outside blurred into streaks of color, the buildings warping, stretching, and then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the car jerked to a stop. Mark nearly slammed into the seat in front of him. He gasped, heart hammering, and looked up. They were outside his apartment. The driver turned his head just slightly, and for the first time, his lips twitched into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Have a good night," he murmured. Mark didn't wait. He bolted from the car, not looking back as the tires screeched away into the night. Inside his apartment, he locked the door, hands shaking. That wasn't just a bad ride. That was something else. Morning light bled through the blinds, painting stripes of gold across Mark's rumpled bedsheets. He groaned, rolling onto his back, the events of last night crashing back into his skull like a freight train. The driver, the silence, those eyes. He sat up too fast, wincing at the throb behind his temples. Just a nightmare, that's all it had to be. A stress-induced hallucination after too many late nights and stale coffee. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. With stiff fingers, he swiped it open, thumb hovering over the rideshare app. The receipt would be there, proof that it had been just another ride, just another forgettable driver. He tapped the icon. The app loaded. His ride history was blank. Mark frowned, refreshing the screen. Nothing. No record of the trip. No charge to his card. No driver's name or license plate. "What the hell?" he muttered, scrolling through the empty list again. A glitch. It had to be. The app was buggy sometimes, right? Servers crashed. Data got lost. But the chill crawling up his spine didn't care about rational explanations. He forced himself out of bed, padding to the kitchen. The coffee maker gurgled to life, filling the apartment with the bitter scent of salvation. He leaned against the counter, phone still clutched in his hand, thumb absently swiping back to the app. Still empty. His stomach twisted. Maybe he'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe he blacked out from exhaustion and walked home. But the memory was too sharp, the unnatural cold, the static, the way the city had warped outside the windows. The coffee maker beeped. He poured a cup, the steam curling into his face as he took a scalding sip. Enough, he had work. Emails to answer, meetings to pretend to care about. Whatever had happened last night didn't matter. Except it did. Because as he shrugged on his jacket and grabbed his keys, his reflection in the hallway mirror caught his eye. And for just a second, just a fraction of a second, his pupils flickered black, like the driver's had. The fluorescent lights of the office hummed overhead, casting a sterile glow over the endless rows of cubicles. Mark's fingers hovered over his keyboard, but his mind was elsewhere, back in that car, back in the suffocating silence. He'd spent the day jumping at shadows, flinching every time a coworker passed too close. The reflection in the bathroom mirror had been normal, no flickering pupils, no unnatural darkness, but the memory of it gnawed at him. Just exhaustion, just stress. His phone buzzed, snapping him back to the present. A text from his boss. Need those reports by EOD. Mark sighed, rubbing his temples. Another late night. Another ride home. His stomach twisted at the thought. He hesitated before opening the rideshare app, thumb hovering over the request button. Maybe he'd take a cab instead, or walk. But the rain had started again, drumming against the office windows in a relentless rhythm. Just book it. It's fine. He selected a different car, this time a blue sedan, not the black one from last night. The app pinged almost instantly. Driver confirmed. 2 minutes away. Relief washed over him. Different car. Different driver. He packed up his things, shrugging on his coat as he stepped into the elevator. The lobby was empty, the receptionist long gone. Rain streaked the glass doors, distorting the city lights beyond. A car pulled up to the curb. Mark's breath caught. Black, not blue. The same car, the same driver. The window rolled down and those pale, unblinking eyes met his through the glass. Going home? The driver asked, voice as hollow as before. Mark's pulse roared in his ears. He should run. He should call another car. But his limbs felt heavy, rooted to the spot. The rain pattered against his shoulders, soaking into his coat. I ordered a blue sedan, he managed. The driver didn't blink. This one's faster. A beat of silence. The city sounds, the honking. The chatter seemed to fade, leaving only the whisper of rain. Mark's fingers tightened around his phone. He could cancel. Could turn and walk away. But then the driver smiled. Just a slight tilt of his lips, and something in Mark's chest itched. Against every screaming instinct, he reached for the door handle. The moment his fingers brushed the cold metal, the street lights flickered. And the driver's eyes, already unsettling, darkened. Not just black, endless. Mark's breath hitched. The back door swung open on its own. Get in, the driver said. It didn't sound like a request. The moment Mark slid into the back seat, the door slammed shut behind him, too hard, too fast, as if pulled by an unseen force. The air inside was frigid, just like before, but now it carried something else, the faint, metallic tang of something old. Something wrong. The driver didn't speak. The car glided forward, tires whispering over wet pavement. The city outside blurred, streetlights stretching into glowing streaks as the speedometer climbed higher than it should have in downtown traffic. Mark's fingers dug into the seat. You switched cars." His voice sounded thin, brittle. "I ordered a blue one." The driver's reflection in the rearview mirror didn't waver. "Did you?" A whisper brushed against Mark's ear, soft, indistinct, like static given voice. He jerked away, twisting to look at the empty back seat. Nothing. But the cold deepened. Another whisper, this time from the other side. A breath against his neck. "Don't look." Mark's pulse spiked. He whipped his head around again, but the seat beside him was still empty. The whispers coiled around him, threading through the air like smoke. "What the hell is this?" His voice cracked. "Stop the car." Now the driver's hands tightened on the wheel. His knuckles were bone white, the veins beneath his skin too dark, too pronounced. The whispers grew louder. "Almost there. He can't see us yet." Mark's breath came in short, sharp gasps. Up. He fumbled for the door handle, yanking at it, but the lock held fast. The window wouldn't roll down. The child's safety light glowed mockingly on the panel. "Let me out." He slammed his palm against the glass. The driver exhaled a slow, rattling sound. "You asked for this ride." "No, I didn't. I ordered a different car." The street outside warped again, buildings melting into shapeless shadows. The headlights cut through the rain, illuminating nothing but an endless stretch of road. No intersections, no traffic. Just the black void of the night and the rhythmic thud of the wipers. Mark's reflection in the window flickered. For a heartbeat, his pupils swallowed the irises whole. Black. Like the driver's, he recoiled. The whispers surged, twisting into a chorus of overlapping voices, half-formed words. "You're one of us, you just don't know it yet." The car lurched violently, tires screeching as it swerved, but there was nothing to swerve from. No other cars, no obstacles, just the road, stretching on and on. Mark's stomach dropped. "What are you?" The driver's lips peeled back, revealing teeth too sharp, too many. "The same as you," he murmured, and then the world outside the window shattered. Into static, or into silence, into nothing at all. Mark's hands trembled as he scrolled through his email, searching for any trace of the ride receipt. His inbox was cluttered with work memos, newsletters, and spam, but nothing from the rideshare company. No confirmation. No charge. "This isn't possible." He switched to his banking app, fingers jabbing at the screen. His recent transactions showed coffee, lunch, a grocery run, but no rideshare fees. Not from last night. Not from either night. A cold knot tightened in his chest. He opened the rideshare app again, staring at the blank ride history. The support tab mocked him with its cheerful font, "Need help?" "Will contact us." He tapped it. The automated chat bot greeted him with a generic response. "Hi there. How can we assist you today?" Mark typed, his thumbs clumsy with adrenaline. "I took 2 rides that aren't showing up in my history." "No receipts. No charges," the bot replied instantly. "I'm sorry to hear that. What? Let me check your account." A pause. Then, "I don't see any recent trips associated with your profile." "Are you sure you used this account?" Mark gritted his teeth. "Yes, I'm sure." Another pause. Longer this time. Then, "For further assistance, please call customer service at 1-800-555-8723. He didn't hesitate. He dialed the number, pressing the phone to his ear as it rang. A woman's voice answered, crisp and professional. Thank you for calling rideshare support. My name is Laura. How can I help you? Mark exhaled. Hi, I took 2 rides over the past 2 nights, but they're not showing up in my history. No receipts, no charges. I see. The clack of a keyboard echoed through the line. Can you confirm the phone number and email associated with your account? He rattled them off, pacing his apartment like a caged animal. Or typing. Then, a beat of silence. Sir, I'm not seeing any rides under your account in the last month. Mark's grip on the phone tightened. That's impossible. I was in the car. Could it have been under a different account? A work profile, perhaps? No, I only have one. His voice rose. Look, the driver, he was wrong. The car was wrong. Something's not. Laura cut in, her tone shifting, suddenly wary. Sir, if you could describe the vehicle, I can escalate this to our safety team. Mark swallowed. Black sedan, no license plate. At least I didn't see one. The driver pale, too pale, and his eyes he trailed off. Silence. Then, carefully, did you get his name? No, it wasn't in the app. Or typing, a sharp inhale. Sir, we don't have any active drivers matching that description in your area. Mark's blood ran cold. What? Our system flags all drivers with verified IDs and vehicle registrations. If you didn't receive a receipt, and we have no record of the trip, she hesitated. It's possible the driver wasn't affiliated with us. The words hung in the air, heavy and damning. Mark's throat went dry. So who the hell was he? A pause. Then, quieter, sir. For your safety, I'd recommend reporting this to the police. The line went staticky for a second, just a split second, but long enough for Mark to catch something beneath it. A whisper. Familiar. You already know. Mark jerked the phone away from his ear, heart hammering. Laura's voice returned, clear again. Sir, are you still there? He forced himself to speak. Yeah, I'm here. Would you like me to connect you with local authorities? His reflection in the darkened TV screen across the room flickered. His pupils dilated black, swallowing green before snapping back to normal. No, not normal. Never normal again, no, he muttered. I'll handle it. He hung up before she could respond. The apartment was too quiet, too still. Mark stared at his phone, at the blank ride history, at the missing receipt that shouldn't be missing. The whispers curled at the edges of his hearing again. You don't need proof. You already know what you are. He threw the phone onto the couch like it had burned him. It wasn't a glitch. It wasn't a mistake. And the worst part, somewhere deep down, in a place he didn't want to acknowledge, he knew the office building loomed behind Mark, its glass facade reflecting the bruised purple of twilight. He stood at the curb, fingers clenched around his briefcase, the weight of the past 2 nights pressing down on his shoulders. He hadn't booked a ride. Not tonight. Not ever again. And yet the black sedan idled at the curb, exhaust curling into the chilly evening air. Mark's breath hitched. The car hadn't pulled up. It had simply appeared, silent as a shadow, its headlights off despite the dimming light. The driver sat motionless behind the wheel, those pale hands resting at 10 and 2, his gaze fixed straight ahead. Waiting. Mark's pulse thundered in his ears. He should turn around. Should walk back inside, call security, something. But his feet stayed rooted to the pavement, as if the asphalt had softened beneath him, holding him in place. The driver's head turned slow, deliberate, until those hollow eyes locked onto Mark's through the window. No smile this time, no greeting, just silence. The back door clicked open. Mark's stomach twisted. He hadn't touched his phone, hadn't even thought about a ride. "He's not waiting for you to call," a voice whispered in the back of his mind. "He's waiting for you to remember." The thought slithered through him, cold and unfamiliar. Not his own. The driver's lips parted. "Get in," not a request, a command. Mark's fingers twitched at his sides. The city sounds around him, the distant honking, the chatter of pedestrians seemed to fade, muffled as if underwater. The only thing sharp, real, was the open door of the sedan, or darkness inside, and the whispers. They were back. Louder now. "You're running out of time." He won't ask again. Mark took a step forward. Then another. His reflection in the car window flickered, his pupils swallowing the green of his irises, just for a second. The whispers surged, triumphant. The moment his shoe touched the interior mat, the car's interior light flickered and died. The door slammed shut behind him. The driver didn't wait for Mark to buckle up. The sedan peeled away from the curb, tires screeching, the city outside the windows warping into streaks of smeared light. Mark gripped the seat, his knuckles white. "Where are you taking me?" The driver didn't answer. The radio crackled to life, not jazz this time, not static, but a low, droning hum. A voice, distorted beyond recognition, murmured beneath it. Mark's head pounded. The hum resonated in his bones, in his teeth, like a tuning fork struck against his spine. The dashboard lights flickered. The speedometer needle trembled, then spun wildly, impossibly past numbers no car could reach. The buildings outside melted away, replaced by a tunnel of writhing shadows, the road stretching into an abyss. Mark's breath came in ragged gasps. "Stop the car." The driver's grip on the wheel tightened. His fingers elongated, the nails darkening, curling like claws. "You don't mean that," he said, but his voice wasn't just his anymore. It layered over itself, a chorus of whispers, of screams, all speaking in unison. Mark's reflection in the window was wrong. His face blurred at the edges, his features shifting, melting. The whispers crescendoed. "You belong with us. You always have." The car lurched violently, throwing Mark against the door. The world outside the windows shattered like glass, and then there was nothing. No road, no city, just the car, hurtling through the void. And the driver, turning fully in his seat now, his face splitting into a grin too wide, too hungry for any human face. "Welcome home," he said. The last thing Mark saw before the darkness swallowed him whole were his own eyes staring back from the rearview mirror. Black. Endless, just like the driver's. Mark's hands shook as he lifted his phone, angling the camera toward the black sedan idling at the curb outside his apartment. The driver sat motionless, his pale fingers curled around the wheel, those hollow eyes fixed straight ahead as if he already knew Mark was watching. The phone screen flickered, the image blurred, pixelating at the edges, the license plate dissolving into a smear of gray static. Mark adjusted the focus, tapping the screen, but every shot came out the same, distorted, unusable. Not possible. He switched to video mode, holding his breath as he hit record. The car shimmered in the frame, its edges wavering like a mirage. The driver's face, when Mark zoomed in, refused to sharpen. Just a pale smudge, featureless, inhuman. A whisper curled against his ear. "You can't catch what isn't there." Mark flinched, nearly dropping the phone. The recording ended abruptly, the file corrupted before he could even save it. "What the hell are you?" he muttered, shoving the phone into his pocket. The driver didn't react. The car didn't move. Mark exhaled sharply, turning on his heel and stalking back inside his apartment. He needed answers, and if the driver wouldn't give them to him, maybe someone else had seen something. The office was a cacophony of ringing phones and murmured conversations, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Mark hovered near the break room, watching his coworkers filter in and out, clutching mugs of coffee and half-eaten pastries. He caught Lisa's arm as she passed. "Hey, have you ever seen a black sedan parked outside the building? Late at night?" Lisa blinked, adjusting her glasses. No. Why?" "No reason. Just thought I saw it a few times." She shrugged. "Probably just a rideshare." Mark forced a nod, moving on to the next person, Javier, from accounting, who frowned when he asked the same question. "Black sedan? Nah, man. You sure you weren't dreaming?" Each denial sent a fresh wave of unease through him. No one had seen it. No one but him. By lunch, he'd asked half the floor. All the same answer. "No. Yeah." Mark slumped into his chair, rubbing his temples. The whispers coiled at the edges of his hearing, taunting. "They can't see us, only you." He gritted his teeth. There had to be something. Security footage. A traffic camera. He pulled up the building's security portal on his computer, typing in his credentials with stiff fingers. The system loaded slowly, finally displaying a grid of camera feeds: lobby, elevators, parking garage, and the front curb. Mark clicked on it, rewinding to last night's timestamp, heart hammering as the footage played back in grainy black and white. The street was empty. No car, no driver. Just Mark, standing alone at the curb, his reflection flickering unnaturally in the darkened windows of the building. Then, impossibly, the footage glitched. For a single frame, the black sedan was there, the driver's face turned toward the camera, his eyes two voids in the static. Then it was gone. Mark's breath caught. He rewound, pausing on the glitched frame. The driver's lips were moving. A single, looping phrase etched into the distortion: "You're running out of time." Mark slammed the laptop shut. The whispers laughed. Mark's apartment felt too small, the walls pressing in as he hunched over his laptop, the glow of the screen casting sharp shadows across his face. He'd spent the last hour combing through forums, news archives, anything that might hint at what he'd experienced. Little black sedan, pale driver. Missing receipts. The search results were a graveyard of dead ends until he stumbled onto an old Reddit thread buried deep in the R Urban Legends subreddit. The title made his stomach clench. "The Silent Watcher. Anyone else seen him?" Mark clicked the link, his pulse quickening as he scanned the post. 3 nights ago, I took a rideshare home from work. Black car, no plates. The driver didn't speak, just stared at me in the mirror the whole ride. Eyes like holes, no receipt, no record of the trip. When I tried to take a pic, my phone glitched. Anyone know what this is? The comments were a mix of skepticism and eerie corroboration. Sounds like a scammer spoofing the app. Nah, man. My cousin had the same thing happen in Chicago. Driver never blinked, said the car felt wrong. There's an old hitchhiker legend in Europe, the silent passenger. But this is the opposite. Isn't it? Mark's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He typed a reply before he could second guess himself. It's not just you. Same car, same driver. He's been waiting for me every night. Says I belong with them. Anyone know what that means? He hit send. The page refreshed, but his comment was gone. Mark frowned. He typed it again. Same result. A private message notification popped up. User, null observer, don't post about him. Nanis. He sees it. Delete your history. They're watching. Mark's throat went dry. He typed back, who are they? The response came instantly. The ones who don't leave receipts. The ones you can't photograph. The ones who look human until they don't. A chill skittered down Mark's spine. Outside, a car engine rumbled low, familiar. He didn't have to look to know the black sedan was back. Null observer sent another message. He's not a driver. He's a ferryman. And you're almost out of time. The screen flickered. The message dissolved into static. Mark's reflection in the monitor darkened, his pupils swallowing his irises whole. Behind him, the front door creaked open, though he'd locked it. A whisper slithered through the room. Last chance. Get in the car. Mark didn't turn around. He already knew what he'd see. The air in Mark's apartment thickened, pressing against his skin like the weight of deep water. He didn't turn to face the open door. He didn't need to. The presence behind him was undeniable, a cold, creeping wrongness that slithered down his spine and settled in his bones. The whispers, always lingering at the edges of his hearing, sharpened into words. You can't stay here, not anymore. Mark's fingers curled into fists on his desk, his nails biting into his palms. The reflection in his darkened monitor showed only the outline of his hunched shoulders, and behind him, the doorway, empty but for the suggestion of movement. A shadow where none should be. The car outside idled, the engine's growl vibrating through the floor. I'm not getting in, Mark said, his voice steadier than he felt. The whispers paused, then laughter. Not from the doorway, from inside him. A sound that bubbled up from his own throat, low and guttural, though his lips didn't move. You don't have a choice. The room tilted. The walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting like a living thing. Mark's vision swam, the edges darkening, his reflection in the monitor stretching, twisting. His pupils flickered black. A hand clamped onto his shoulder. Mark jerked away, spinning in his chair to face the intruder, but there was no one there. The doorway yawned empty. The only sound was the hum of the sedan outside waiting. Or his phone buzzed on the desk. A notification lit up the screen. Rideshare update. Your driver has arrived. Mark hadn't booked a ride. He snatched up the phone, fingers trembling as he swiped open the app. The screen glitched, pixels scrambling before resolving into a single message, destination, home. The word pulsed, as if alive. A floorboard creaked behind him. Mark turned slowly. The driver stood in the doorway, not just pale, now translucent, his edges blurred, as if he were half-formed. His hollow eyes bored into Mark's, the void in them deeper than before. Hungrier. You're late, the driver said. His voice was wrong, layered, echoing, as if a dozen mouths spoke at once. Mark's pulse hammered in his throat. I'm not going anywhere with you. The driver's lips curled, revealing too many teeth. You already are. The whispers surged, crashing over Mark like a wave. They weren't just voices now, they were memories. Fragments of things he'd never lived. Dark roads, endless rides. Faces in the rearview mirror that were his but not his. Mark staggered, gripping the desk for balance. What did you do to me? The driver stepped forward. The temperature plummeted, frost creeping across the floorboards. "Nothing," he murmured. "We only woke you up." The room dissolved. For a heartbeat, Mark saw the truth: the car, hurtling through a void, the road stretching into infinity. The back seat filled with shadows, whispering, reaching. And the driver, grinning, his face splitting like cracked porcelain. Then the vision snapped away, leaving Mark gasping on his knees in his apartment. The driver loomed over him. "Last ride," he said, extending a hand. Mark's reflection in the floor-length mirror by the door wasn't his own. It was the driver's, and it was smiling. The whispers roared. "Come home." Mark reached for the offered hand. The moment their fingers touched, the world shattered and the car's door slammed shut behind him. The engine roared. The driver didn't ask for a destination this time. He already knew. Mark's apartment felt different after the fourth ride. The air clung to his skin like a film, thick and stagnant, as if the walls themselves had absorbed the unnatural chill from the car. He exhaled sharply, watching his breath mist in front of him, despite the thermostat reading a steady 72 def. He jabbed at the controls, turning the heat up. The furnace kicked on with a groan, but the cold didn't relent. If anything, it deepened, seeping into his bones. This isn't normal. Mark rubbed his arms, pacing the length of the living room. The whispers had quieted since he'd stepped inside, but their absence was worse, a silence so complete it pressed against his eardrums. He grabbed his phone, thumbing through his contacts before hesitating. Who could he call? The police. "Yeah, hi, my apartment's haunted by the ghost of a rideshare driver." They'd laugh him off the line. A shiver racked his body, this one sharper than the last. His reflection in the darkened TV screen caught his eye, pale, pupils too wide, his breath still curling in visible plumes. The thermostat beeped. He turned. The display now read 32 def. Mark's stomach dropped. He hadn't touched it. The cold intensified, crawling up his legs like invisible hands. Frost spider-webbed across the window panes, intricate and deliberate, forming patterns that almost looked like letters. Mark stepped closer, his pulse thundering. The frost wasn't random. It curled into words, jagged and Nevin, "You're already gone." A sharp crack echoed through the apartment. The overhead light flickered, then burst in a shower of sparks, plunging the room into darkness. Mark stumbled back, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The cold wasn't just in the air now, it was inside him, spreading through his veins like ink and water. His fingers tingled, then went numb, the sensation creeping up his wrists. The whispers returned, louder, more urgent. "You can't fight it. You're one of us." Mark's legs gave out. He collapsed onto the couch, his limbs leaden, his vision swimming. The frost on the windows thickened, spreading across the walls now, the words multiplying. "Come home. You belong here. The car is waiting. A knock at the door. 3 slow, deliberate raps. Mark's head lolled toward the sound. He couldn't feel his fingers anymore. Couldn't feel his lips. The knocking came again. The door handle turned on its own. The last thing Mark saw before the darkness took him was the driver's silhouette in the doorway, taller now, sharper, his eyes twin voids in the black. And his smile, wider than any human mouth should be. The whispers sang. "Welcome back." The bar was too loud, the air thick with the stench of spilled beer and cigarette smoke clinging to clothes from the alley out back. Mark hunched over his 4th whiskey, the ice long melted, his fingers leaving damp prints on the glass. Every clink of bottles, every burst of laughter made his shoulders tense. They're watching, he could feel them. The whispers had grown teeth, gnawing at the edges of his thoughts even here, in the crowded dive. The bartender, a burly guy with the tattooed knuckles, had stopped asking if he wanted another round. Just slid them over when Mark's glass emptied, his expression unreadable. He knows Mark shook his head, the liquor blurring the thought before it could take root. Paranoia. That's all it was. The TV above the bar flickered, the sports game cutting to static for a heartbeat. Long enough for Mark to see it his own face, pale and hollow-eyed, reflected in the screen. His pupils swallowed the green of his irises, black bleeding into the whites. He blinked. The game was back. His hands shook. A hand clamped onto his shoulder. Mark flinched so hard he nearly toppled off the stool. Easy, man. A stranger, some guy in a windbreaker, held up his palms. Just asking if you're good. You've been staring at that glass like it's gonna bite you. Mark forced a laugh. It came out ragged. Peachy. The guy hesitated, then shrugged and melted back into the crowd. Mark exhaled, rubbing his temples. He needed air. Needed to get out of here before. The bar's door creaked open. A hush fell over the room. Not all at once, just a ripple, a slow draining of sound, like someone had turned down the volume. Mark didn't look up, didn't need to. The cold seeped in first, then the silence. When he finally lifted his head, the bartender was frozen mid-pour, foam spilling over the rim of a pint glass. The guy in the windbreaker was half-turned, his mouth open in a laugh that would never finish. And in the doorway, the driver. Taller now, thinner, his limbs too long, his suit stretched taut over shoulders that didn't sit right. His face was a smear of pale skin and shadows, but the eyes, black. Endless. Mark's whiskey glass cracked, a hairline fissure splitting the side. The driver didn't speak, just tilted his head, emotion too sharp, too wrong, and stepped inside. The bar's lights flickered. The jukebox skipped, a warped note stretching into a groan. Mark's phone buzzed in his pocket. He didn't check it. He already knew what it would say. The driver stopped a foot away, the scent of old leather and something metallic clinging to him. The radio at his hip, an ancient, boxy thing that hadn't been there before, crackled to life. Static. Then beneath it, Mark, his name, whispered in his own voice. The driver smiled. "Time to go," he said. The bar dissolved around them. The patrons, the bottles, the light, all of it bled away, leaving only the car idling at the curb, its door already open. The whispers roared. Mark didn't fight it this time. He stood and let the static swallow him whole. The moment Mark's foot crossed the threshold of the car, the world outside ceased to exist. The bar, the street, the city, all of it melted into a smeared blur of shadow and light, swallowed by the static humming through the car's speakers. The door clicked shut behind him, sealing him in with the cold and the whispers. The driver didn't speak. His hands, pale, two long fingers curled around the wheel, didn't move. The car didn't need steering. The road ahead was nothing but darkness, the headlights cutting through an abyss that stretched forever. Mark's breath fogged in the air. His reflection in the window flickered, his pupils dilating until his eyes were twin voids, black and depthless. "You're almost there." The whisper came from his own mouth, his lips moving without his permission. Mark clenched his jaw. "Where?" The driver exhaled a slow, rattling sound that wasn't quite a laugh. His head turned just slightly, enough for Mark to see the edge of his smile. Too wide. Too many teeth. Soon, the driver said. A single word. A promise. Mark's stomach twisted. The air in the car thickened, pressing against his skin like a physical weight. The whispers surged, overlapping, merging into a chorus of voices that weren't voices at all, just thoughts, memories, things that didn't belong to him but lived inside his skull now. "You've always been ours, you just forgot." The speedometer needle trembled, then spun, the numbers blurring past anything a car could reach. The windows rattled in their frames, the glass warping, bending inward as if something outside pressed against them, hungry. Mark's hands flew to the door handle. He yanked, but the lock held fast. The child's safety light glowed mockingly. "Let me out," he snarled. The driver didn't react. Mark slammed his fist against the window. The glass didn't shatter, it rippled, like the surface of a pond disturbed by a stone. His reflection twisted, his features melting, reforming into something not quite human. The whispers laughed. Mark recoiled. His breath came in short, sharp gasps, his pulse a frantic drumbeat in his throat. The cold inside him spread, numbing his limbs, his thoughts. The car hit a bump, except there was no road. No ground. Just the endless dark. And then ahead, a light. Faint at first, a pinprick in the void. Growing closer. Brighter. The whispers fell silent. Mark's chest tightened. He didn't want to see what was coming. Didn't want to know. The light resolved into a shape, a tunnel, its walls lined with figures, their faces blurred, their hands pressed against the glass as the car hurtled past. Familiar faces. His own. Dozens of him. Hundreds. All with the same black eyes. The driver's smile widened. Home. Mark's vision swam. The tunnel walls peeled back, revealing a vast, yawning space beyond a city, but not a city. Towers of twisted metal and glass, streets that curved in impossible directions, shadows that moved on their own. And the car, gliding to a stop at the edge of it all. The driver turned fully in his seat, his body elongating, his suit splitting at the seams to reveal something beneath, something dark and shifting and wrong. "Last stop," he said. The door locks clicked open. Mark didn't move. Couldn't. The whispers were gone, replaced by a silence so complete it ached. The driver's hand cold, too many joints closed around Mark's wrist. "You don't need to run," he murmured. "Not anymore." Mark looked down at his own hand. His fingers were pale, translucent. The edges blurred, like a photograph left in the rain. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. He wasn't getting out. He never had been. The driver's grip tightened. Soon, Mark wrenched free and ran. Mark's hands trembled as he swiped through his phone, the glow of the screen the only light in his pitch-black apartment. The cold had settled into the walls, the floors, his bones, but that wasn't what made his breath hitch. The rideshare app was gone. Not just uninstalled. All gone, no trace of it in his download history, no residual files. It had vanished like it had never existed. Mark's throat tightened. He typed the app's name into the search bar, fingers clumsy with adrenaline. The store loaded dozens of similar apps, but not the one he'd used. Not the one that had summoned him. No, he jammed his thumb against the download button for the closest match. The install bar crawled across the screen, agonizingly slow. The moment it finished, he tapped the icon. The app crashed. Mark swore, reopening it. Again. Each time the screen flashed white before freezing, then kicking him back to his home screen. A whisper curled against his ear, soft as static. "You don't need it." Mark's head snapped up. The apartment was empty, the silence suffocating. But the air pulsed, like the room itself was breathing. He threw his phone onto the couch, the device skidding across the cushions before clattering to the floor. The screen stayed lit, the app still open. Frozen on a glitched image, a distorted glimpse of a black sedan, its windows opaque. Mark took a step back. His reflection in the darkened TV screen flickered, his pupils swallowing the green of his irises for a heartbeat before snapping back. Not a glitch, not a mistake, the whispers surged, louder now, threading through the silence like smoke. "He's coming. You can't stop it." Mark's breath fogged in the air, though the thermostat reads 75 def. Frost crept across the window panes, jagged lines spiderwebbing the glass. Outside, an engine growled. Oh, familiar. Mark didn't have to look to know the black sedan idled at the curb, its headlights off, its driver waiting. The app hadn't disappeared because it was broken. It had disappeared because he didn't need it anymore. The car had already chosen him, and it wasn't going to let him go. The black sedan was everywhere now. Mark spotted it outside the grocery store, idling near the cart return, the driver's hollow eyes tracking him through the windshield as he loaded bags into his car. He saw it in the park, parked beneath a skeletal oak, its headlights off despite the gathering dusk. Each time, the driver didn't move, didn't speak. Just watched. Like he was waiting for something. Like Mark was running out of time. The produce aisle was too bright, the fluorescent lights glaring off the polished floors. Mark gripped the handle of his basket, his knuckles white. He could feel the sedan's presence even inside the store, a cold, creeping wrongness that made the back of his neck prickle. He turned a corner, nearly colliding with a display of apples. A woman in a red coat shot him a glare before pushing her cart past. A whisper brushed against his ear. "He's here." Mark spun. The aisle was empty, but at the far end, near the exit, a shadow stretched too long, a silhouette that didn't match the overhead lights. Tall. Thin. The driver. Mark's breath hitched. The man wasn't moving, just standing there, hands at his sides, his face a pale smudge in the artificial light. The whispers surged, threading through the canned music overhead, twisting the cheerful jingle into something dissonant. "So you can't hide, not here." Mark dropped his basket, the apples spilling across the floor with a series of dull thuds. He didn't stop to pick them up, didn't look back. He bolted for the exit. The automatic doors hissed open, releasing him into the parking lot. The evening air was thick with the scent of rain and exhaust. His car was 3 rows away too far. The black sedan idled at the curb, its windows tinted, its engine silent. Mark's pulse roared in his ears. He fumbled for his keys, his fingers numb. A hand clamped onto his shoulder. He whirled, raising his fists, but it was just the woman from the aisle, her red coat bright under the lot's halogen lights. "You dropped these," she said, holding out his wallet. Mark blinked. He hadn't even felt it fall. "Thanks," he muttered, snatching it back. When he looked up, the sedan was gone. But the whispers remained. Soon the park was empty at this hour, the playground swings creaking in the wind, the paths lit by flickering street lamps. Mark sat on a bench, his breath fogging in the cold air, his phone clutched in his hand. He'd scrolled through every forum, every urban legend site, searching for answers. There were none. Only more questions. Only the growing certainty that he wasn't the first. And he wouldn't be the last. A twig snapped behind him. Mark didn't turn. He didn't need to. The cold settled over him like a shroud, the air thickening, the whispers rising to a crescendo. The driver stood at the edge of the path, his silhouette too tall, his suit too crisp under the sickly yellow light. This time he didn't wait. He stepped forward, and the street lamp above him burst in a shower of sparks. Mark's phone screen glitched, the image distorting, the words rearranging themselves into a single, pulsing message. Last ride. The driver smiled, and the world dissolved into static. Mark's fingers flew across the keyboard, the glow of his laptop screen the only light in his apartment. The search bar taunted him: black sedan rideshare, pale driver, missing receipts, but the results were the same: fragments of stories, half-remembered nightmares, dismissed as urban legends. Then he found it. Buried in a decade-old forum thread titled "Strange Encounters, the Ones Who Don't Belong," a single post stood out. "Last night I took a rideshare home from work. Black sedan, no plates. The driver never spoke, just stared at me in the mirror with these hollow eyes. The app showed no record of the trip. No receipt. No charge. When I tried to take a photo, my phone glitched like it couldn't focus on him. Then, just before I got out, he said, 'You'll see me again.' The next night he was waiting outside my apartment. I'd parked, just there. I tried to run, but the post ended abruptly. The final update, time-stamped 3 days later, was a single line. 'He took me.' Mark's breath caught. He scrolled down, desperate for more, but the thread was locked. User banned. Account deleted. A whisper curled against his ear, so close it could have been his own thought. "You're next." Mark slammed the laptop shut. His reflection in the dark screen flickered, his pupils dilating until his eyes were voids. The apartment hummed with silence, the kind that came before a storm. Outside, an engine growled to life. Mark didn't have to look to know the black sedan was idling at the curb, waiting. The whispers laughed, and for the first time Mark laughed with them. Rain drummed against the pavement as Mark sprinted down the alley, his breath ragged, his shoes slipping on the slick concrete. Behind him, the black sedan rolled forward at a crawl, its headlights cutting through the downpour like twin blades. He'd made it 3 blocks from his apartment before the car appeared, not parked, not waiting, but following, gliding soundlessly through the storm. Mark skidded around a corner, his shoulder slamming into a dumpster. Pain flared up his side, but he didn't stop. Couldn't. The whispers hissed in his ears, urgent now. He's here. He's always been here. A dead end. The alley terminated it in a chain-link fence, the metal rattling in the wind. Mark grabbed it, fingers curling through the links, already knowing it was too high. Too late. The sedan's engine purred to a stop. The door clicked open. Mark turned, his back pressed to the fence, his pulse a frantic drumbeat in his throat. The driver stepped out. Not the pale, hollow-eyed man from before. Something worse. His limbs stretched too long, his suit straining at the seams as if something beneath it pulsed and twisted. His face was a blur, not a trick of the rain, but a void, features smeared like wet ink. Only the eyes remained sharp, black, endless. Mark's breath fogged in the air, the cold so deep it burned. The whispers swarmed, overlapping, merging into a single, deafening hum. The driver didn't speak, didn't need to. The car's back door swung open on its own. Inside, the seats were slick with frost, the windows glazed over, patterns forming in the ice, words looping over and over. "Come home." Mark's legs gave out. He slid down the fence, his knees hitting the pavement. The cold wasn't just around him now, it was in him, threading through his veins, his bones, his thoughts. The driver took a step forward, then another. The alley warped, the walls stretching, the rain freezing midair. Mark's reflection in a puddle flickered, his eyes black, his mouth stretched in a grin that wasn't his. The whispers sang, "No more running." The driver's hand cold, too many fingers closed around Mark's wrist. And the world went dark. The whispers were clear now. Not just murmurs in the static, not just fragments of voices, words, sharp and deliberate, repeating in a looping chant. 42 Willowbrook Lane, 42 Willowbrook Lane, Mark's address. The back seat of the sedan was no longer leather and frost. It was a cocoon of shadows, tendrils of darkness curling around his wrists, his ankles, threading through his hair like skeletal fingers. The cold had seeped into his lungs, his heartbeat slowing to match the rhythm of the whispers. The driver didn't turn, didn't speak. The car hurtled through the void, the road beneath them not asphalt but something older, something that pulsed like a living thing. Mark's lips moved without his permission. 42 Willowbrook Lane, his voice. Not his words. The dashboard lights flickered, the speedometer needle spinning past numbers that didn't exist. The radio crackled, a warped voice breaking through the static, almost home. The locks clicked. All of them. Mark's breath hitched. The doors hadn't just locked, they'd sealed, the handles retracting into the frames like they'd never existed. The child's safety light glowed a sickly green, the only illumination in the suffocating dark. The driver's reflection in the rearview mirror was wrong. His face stretched, his jaw unhinging like a serpent's, his teeth too many, too sharp. You remember now, Mark's vision swam. Flashes of memory not his, never his, flooded his mind. Endless rides, countless passengers, 100 versions of himself, all with the same hollow eyes, all whispering the same address. 42 Willowbrook Lane. The car lurched violently, throwing Mark against the door. The windows shattered but no glass fell. Just darkness, pouring in like water. The whispers surged, a chorus of voices screaming in unison. The sedan screeched to a halt. Silence. Mark's chest heaved, his fingers numb where they dug into the seat. The driver turned fully in his seat, his body contorting, his suit splitting at the seams to reveal the writhing void beneath. His mouth opened. No words came out. Just a sound, a low, droning hum that vibrated in Mark's teeth and his bones, like the earth itself groaning. The passenger door swung open, not to an alley, not to a street, to his apartment. 42 Willowbrook Lane. The driver's hand cold, two long fingers gestured to the doorway. Welcome back. Mark's legs moved on their own. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, the world behind him dissolved, the car, the driver, the whispers, all of it swallowed by the dark. The door slammed shut, locked, from the outside. And inside the empty apartment, the whispers began again. 42 Willowbrook Lane. Mark's reflection in the hallway mirror smiled. Black eyes, endless teeth. The next ride would come soon, and he would be ready. Mark's breath came in ragged gasps as he stumbled back from the hallway mirror, his reflection grinning at him with black, depthless eyes. The whispers coiled around him, slithering through the air like serpents made of static. You belong here. You always have. His hands trembled. The apartment was freezing, frost creeping up the walls in jagged, unnatural patterns. The front door loomed behind him, locked from the outside, just like the car. But the window, the living room window. Mark lunged for it, fingers scrabbling at the latch. It was stiff, frozen shut, but he threw his weight against it, gritting his teeth as the metal groaned in protest. A whisper brushed against his ear, closer this time, almost intimate. "You can't leave." The latch gave way with a snap. Cold night air rushed in, carrying the scent of rain and distant traffic. Mark didn't hesitate. He shoved the window open, the glass rattling in its frame, and hauled himself onto the sill. Behind him, the apartment warped. The walls pulsed inward, the shadows stretching, reaching for him. The whispers rose to a deafening crescendo, voices overlapping, merging into a single guttural command. "Stop!" Mark didn't look back. He jumped. The fall was shorter than he expected, just a single story, but the impact still sent a jolt of pain up his legs as he hit the damp grass below. He rolled, his shoulder taking the brunt of the landing, before scrambling to his feet. The street was empty. No pedestrians. No cars. Just the glow of street lights reflecting off wet pavement. And the black sedan, parked at the curb, waiting. The driver's door creaked open. Mark's blood turned to ice. He spun on his heel and ran. His shoes slapped against the pavement, his breath burning in his lungs. He didn't dare glance back, didn't need to. The engine didn't roar to life. No tires screeched in pursuit. But he felt it. The car wasn't following him. It was letting him run. The thought sent a fresh wave of terror through him. He skidded around a corner, nearly slipping on the rain-slicked concrete, and ducked into the first open business he saw, a 24-hour diner, and its neon sign buzzing faintly in the dark. The warmth inside hit him like a physical blow. The diner was nearly empty, just a tired-looking waitress wiping down the counter and a couple hunched over coffee in a booth. The smell of grease and stale syrup was almost comforting. Mark slumped into a seat by the window, his hands shaking too badly to grip the menu. He forced himself to look outside. The street was still empty. No sedan, no driver, but the whispers hadn't stopped. They curled at the edges of his hearing, softer now, almost amused. "You can't outrun it. You'll see." The waitress approached, her expression shifting from boredom to concern as she took in Mark's wild eyes, his torn sleeve, the dirt smeared across his knees. "You okay, on?" Mark opened his mouth to say what. He didn't know. A lie? A plea for help? The diner's lights flickered. Just once. A fraction of a second. But long enough for Mark to see it. Outside the window, reflected in the glass, the black sedan idled at the curb. And in the driver's seat, a silhouette too tall, too still. Watching, Mark's throat tightened. The lights steadied. The street outside was empty again. The waitress was still waiting for an answer, her brow furrowed. Mark swallowed hard. "I'm fine," he lied. "Just a long night." She nodded, unconvinced, but took his coffee order and left him alone with his thoughts. Mark stared at his reflection in the diner window. His pupils were normal again, green, human. For now. The car hadn't followed him, but it didn't need to. It would be back, and next time he wouldn't escape. Mark's dreams were never his own anymore. They were fragments of the void, of the endless road, of the whispers that now lived inside his skull. Tonight the dream was sharper, more real than the waking world had ever been. He stood in a vast, empty parking lot, the asphalt stretching in every direction until it melted into the horizon. No cars. No people. Just the hum of something distant, something alive, vibrating through the soles of his shoes. And the black sedan, parked in the center of the lot, its headlights off, its windows tinted to an impossible opacity. The driver's door was open, the interior a yawning mouth of shadow. Mark's feet moved without his permission. The asphalt was warm, almost pulsing, like the lot itself was breathing. With every step, the whispers grew louder, no longer in his ears, but in his bones, vibrating through his marrow. "You're almost ready, just one more ride." The driver wasn't in the car. He was in the rearview mirror. Mark froze. The reflection stared back at him, not from the glass, but from inside it, as if the mirror were a window to some other place. The driver's face was pressed against the surface, his features distorted, his hollow eyes wide, unblinking. His lips moved, but the words were swallowed by the hum of the lot. Then a hand, pale, two long fingers, sliding out from the mirror, grasping at the air. Mark stumbled back, his pulse a frantic drum in his throat. The parking lot warped, the asphalt rippling like water, the sky above twisting into a spiral of static. The driver's hand kept reaching. Closer. Mark turned to run and the ground vanished beneath him. He fell, not down. Through the world shattered into fragments of light and sound, whispers screaming in triumph as the darkness swallowed him whole. Mark woke with a gasp, his sheets tangled around his legs, his skin slick with sweat. His apartment was silent, empty, but the cold remained. And the whispers, always the whispers. He dragged himself out of bed, his legs unsteady, his reflection in the bathroom mirror making him flinch. His pupils were normal, for now. The dream clung to him like a second skin, the image of the driver's hand reaching from the mirror seared into his mind. It wasn't just a dream, it was a warning, a promise. The eighth ride was coming, and this time he wouldn't wake up. Mark jolted awake, his heart hammering against his ribs. The dream, the parking lot, the mirror, the driver's grasping hand still clung to the edges of his vision, refusing to fade. He sucked in a ragged breath, the air in his bedroom thick and stale. Then he saw it. Outside his window, parked beneath the flickering glow of a dying street lamp, was the black sedan. The driver wasn't inside. He was standing on the sidewalk, his pale face tilted up toward Mark's window, those hollow eyes fixed unblinkingly on him. Mark's breath caught. The man hadn't moved, hadn't knocked, just stood there, his hands limp at his sides, his suit too crisp, too perfect under the sickly yellow light. The street was empty, no passing cars, no late-night pedestrians, just the sedan and its silent driver, waiting. Mark's fingers curled into the sheets. The whispers coiled in his ears, softer now, almost reverent. "T, it's time." The driver's lips parted. No sound came out, but Mark heard the words anyway. "Come home." The street lamp above the sedan burst in a shower of sparks, plunging the sidewalk into darkness. When the afterimage cleared, the driver was gone. But the car remained, door open, engine running, waiting. Mark's reflection in the window flickered his pupils, swallowing the green of his irises, his mouth stretching into a grin that wasn't his. The whispers sang. Last ride, Mark didn't move. He didn't have to. The decision had already been made. The car would take him, and this time he wouldn't fight it. Mark's fingers trembled as he dialed 911, pressing the phone to his ear while keeping his eyes locked on the sedan outside. The street lamp's shattered glass glittered on the pavement like fallen stars. 911, what's your emergency? The operator's voice was calm, professional. There's a car outside my apartment, Mark rasped. Black sedan, no plates. The driver, he was just standing there, staring at my window. He's not human. A pause. Too long. Sir, is the individual attempting to enter your home? Mark's throat tightened. No, but he's been following me. The car appears out of nowhere. It's not just a stalker, it's something else. Something wrong. Another pause. The sound of typing. I'm dispatching an officer to your location. Please stay on the line. Mark exhaled, nodding even though she couldn't see him. His reflection in the window was still wrong, too still, too knowing. The sedan hadn't moved. The open door yawned like a mouth. Minutes crawled by. The operator asked him questions. Did he have a weapon? Had the driver threatened him? But Mark's answers felt hollow. How could he explain the whispers? The way the car warped reality. The way his own eyes flickered black in the dark. Then finally the distant wail of a siren. A patrol car rolled up, its headlights cutting through the gloom. Mark sagged with relief, hanging up and rushing to the door. The officer stepped out, her flashlight sweeping the sidewalk. Sir, you the one who called? Yes, Mark pointed at the sedan. That car, the driver was just the words died in his throat. The sedan was gone. No tire marks, no trace. Just an empty stretch of curb where it had been idling moments before. The officer's flashlight beam swept the area, lingering on the broken glass from the street lamp. You said it was a black sedan? It was right there, Mark insisted, his voice cracking. The driver, he was staring at me. The streetlight exploded when he left. The officer's expression shifted. Not disbelief, exactly. Something worse. Pity. She clicked off her flashlight. Sir, have you been drinking tonight? Mark's stomach dropped. No, I'm not making this up. She nodded slowly, the way one might humor a child. I'll file a report, but without a vehicle or plate number, there's not much we can do. You might want to consider getting some rest. Mark's hands clenched at his sides. The whispers slithered through his mind, laughing. They never believe, they never see. The officer handed him a card. All if you see the car again. Try to get a plate next time. Next time. Oh, as if it were that simple. Mark took the card, his fingers numb. The patrol car pulled away, leaving him alone on the sidewalk. The cold deepened. Behind him, the faintest sound, a car door clicking shut. Mark turned slowly. The sedan was back, parked in the exact same spot. The driver sat behind the wheel, his face a pale smudge in the dark. This time he didn't smile. He didn't need to. The whispers rose in unison, a chorus of voices. Mark now recognized his own among them. You're out of time." The passenger door swung open. Mark's reflection in the window smiled. And this time he smiled back. The morning light was too bright, too ordinary, as Mark stepped out of his apartment building. The sedan was already there, not lurking in shadows this time, but parked boldly at the curb in broad daylight. The driver sat motionless behind the wheel, his pale hands resting at 10 and 2, his hollow eyes fixed straight ahead. Passers-by strolled past without a second glance. A woman pushing a stroller, a jogger with earbuds in, a group of teenagers laughing. None of them reacted. None of them saw. Mark's pulse thudded in his throat. He took a hesitant step forward, his shoes scuffing against the pavement. The driver's head turned slow, deliberate, until those endless black eyes locked onto his. A whisper curled against Mark's ear, soft as static. "They don't see us. They never will." Mark swallowed hard. He raised a hand, waving at the jogger as he passed. Hey, do you see that car?" The jogger slowed, pulling out an earbud. "What?" "The black sedan." Mark pointed. "Right there." The jogger followed his gesture, then frowned. "Dude, there's nothing there." Mark's stomach dropped. The sedan was right there, its chrome gleaming in the sunlight, the driver's silhouette unmistakable. The jogger shook his head and took off again, leaving Mark standing alone on the sidewalk. The whispers laughed. The driver's door creaked open. No theatrics this time, no warping streets or shattering lights. Just the car, the road, and the terrible, inevitable truth. Mark's reflection in the sedan's window was no longer his own. His pupils swallowed the light, his edges blurred, his mouth stretched into something that wasn't quite a smile. The whispers weren't separate from him anymore. They were his. The driver didn't speak. Didn't need to. Mark walked forward. Got in, the door closed, and as the car pulled away, the world outside faded not into darkness but into nothingness, as if it had never been real at all. The last thing Mark saw before the static took him was his own face in the rearview mirror. Black-eyed, smiling, finally home. The knock came at midnight. 3 slow, deliberate raps against the door, each one sending a jolt through Mark's bones. He hadn't slept in days. The whispers had grown louder, more insistent, until they were all he could hear, all he could think. He didn't move from the couch. His fingers curled into the fabric of the cushions, his breath shallow. The knock came again, louder this time. Mark's reflection in the darkened TV screen flickered, his pupils dilated, his lips parting in a silent snarl. Not his reflection. Not anymore. The knocking stopped. A long silence stretched, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and the distant drip of the kitchen faucet. Then, a soft scratch at the base of the door. Mark stood, his legs unsteady. The hardwood floor was icy beneath his bare feet, the cold seeping up through his skin. He took a step forward. Another. The scratching stopped. Something slid beneath the door. A single sheet of paper, stark white against the dark wood. Mark crouched, his fingers trembling as he picked it up. The words were jagged, uneven, as if carved into the page by something with too many joints, too many claws. "You can't run forever, Dot." The handwriting wasn't human. Mark's breath fogged in the air. The whispers surged, drowning out all other sound, all other thought. Behind him, the window frosted over, the glass cracking with a sound like breaking bones. The street outside was empty. No sedan. No driver. But the message was clear. The next ride wouldn't be an offer. It would be a taking. Mark's reflection in the glass smiled. and this time he didn't fight it. Mark hadn't left his apartment in 3 days. The cold had seeped into the walls, the floors, the very air he breathed, clinging to him like a second skin. He sat hunched on his couch, wrapped in a blanket that did nothing to ward off the chill, his fingers numb around a cup of coffee long gone cold. The black sedan hadn't moved from its spot outside his window, just sat there, engine off, driver motionless behind the wheel, watching, always watching. Mark's reflection in the TV screen flickered, his pupils dilating for a fraction of a second before snapping back to normal. The whispers had grown louder, more coherent, threading through his thoughts until he couldn't tell where they ended and he began. "You can't stay here. You know where you belong." He squeezed his eyes shut, pressing the heels of his palms against his temples. The knocking from last night still echoed in his skull, the scrap of paper with its jagged, inhuman writing now crumpled in his fist. A sound cut through the silence, a sharp click. Mark's eyes flew open. The front door's deadbolt had turned on its own. His breath hitched. He hadn't touched it. Hadn't even gone near it since the knocking. The knob twisted slowly, the mechanism groaning. Mark shot to his feet, the blanket pooling at his feet. His pulse roared in his ears, drowning out the whispers for the first time in days. The door creaked open. Not all the way, just a sliver. Enough to see the hallway beyond empty, the overhead light flickering weakly. And the cold. God, the cold. It poured through the gap, tendrils of frost spiderwebbing across the floor, creeping toward Mark's bare feet. His breath fogged in front of him, the air so frigid it burned his lungs. The whispers surged, triumphant. "He's here." Mark took a step back, his heel hitting the edge of the coffee table. The sedan was still outside, he could see it through the window, the driver's silhouette unmoving. So a hand slid through the gap in the door. Pale, too long. Fingers tipped with nails that curled like claws. Mark's throat locked, the hand flexed, the bones beneath the skin shifting in ways that shouldn't be possible. Then it gripped the edge of the door and pushed. The hinges groaned. The whispers screamed. Mark turned and ran. He didn't think, didn't plan. Just bolted for the bedroom, slamming the door behind him and throwing his weight against it as if that could stop what was coming. His chest heaved, his fingers scrambling for the lock, a sound from the other side. Or not footsteps, not breathing, but the slow, deliberate creak of the front door swinging fully open. And then, silence. Mark pressed his ear to the wood, straining to hear anything over the thunder of his own heart. Nothing. Nothing. Had it left? Had it given up? A whisper brushed against his ear, so close it could have been a breath. "You can't hide," Mark whirled. The bedroom was empty, but the window, frost spread across the glass, jagged lines forming words he didn't need to read to understand. The sedan's headlights flicked on, cutting through the gathering dusk. The driver's door opened, and Mark knew the 11th ride had begun. The whispers were constant now, overlapping voices of past victims. No, not victims, passengers all speaking at once. Their words slithered through Mark's mind, their cadences varying from frantic to resigned, but all echoing the same terrible truth: "You are one of us." Mark pressed his back against the bedroom door, his pulse hammering so hard his vision blurred. The frost on the window thickened, the words solidifying. "Last stop." A floorboard creaked in the living room. Then another, slow, deliberate. Something was moving through his apartment. Mark's breath came in shallow gasps, his fingers digging into the door frame. The whispers swelled, drowning out all rational thought. He could feel them pressing against the other side of the door, their presence like a physical weight. The bedroom doorknob turned, just slightly. Mark recoiled, stumbling toward the window. His reflection in the glass was barely human anymore. His pupils swallowed the green of his irises, his mouth stretched too wide, but his edges blurred like a photograph left in the rain. The knob turned further. The whisper screamed. Mark didn't hesitate. He threw open the window, the frigid night air slamming into him like a wall. The fire escape was slick with frost, the metal groaning under his weight as he clambered onto it. Below, the black sedan idled, its passenger door already open. The driver stood beside it, his face tilted up toward Mark, those hollow eyes gleaming in the dark. Not waiting, expecting Mark's legs moved without his command. He descended the fire escape, each step sending a fresh jolt of terror through him. The whispers crescendoed, their voices merging into a single deafening chant. Come home. Come home. Come home. The alleyway was silent. No distant sirens, no barking dogs, just the hum of the sedan's engine and the crunch of frost beneath Mark's shoes as he stepped onto the pavement. The driver didn't speak, didn't need to. Mark's reflection in the car window grinned back at him, its teeth too sharp, its eyes endless voids. The whispers fell silent. For the first time, there was only one voice. His own. Get in. Mark reached for the door handle. The moment his fingers brushed the cold metal, the world dissolved into static. The last thing he saw was the driver's smile wide, triumphant before the darkness swallowed him whole. And the 11th ride began in earnest. The train station was a blur of noise and motion, announcements crackling over the speakers, travelers dragging suitcases, the scent of burnt coffee and diesel fumes thick in the air. Mark clutched his backpack to his chest, his breath shallow as he scanned the departure board. The 10:15 to Albany was still on time. Just get on the train. Just get out of the city. He'd packed in a frenzy, thrown clothes, cash, his passport into a bag, and bolted before dawn. No note, no calls, just the desperate, clawing certainty that if he didn't leave now, he'd never leave at all. The whispers had quieted since last night. Not gone, never gone, but muted, as if waiting. Mark's reflection in the station's glass doors flickered, his pupils dilated, black swallowing green for a heartbeat before snapping back. He flinched, turning away. Not real. Not yet. He joined the line for the platform, shoulders hunched, eyes darting. No black sedans, no pale drivers, just ordinary people, tired and impatient, shuffling forward as the line inched toward the turnstiles. A child's laughter echoed from somewhere behind him, high, bright, utterly out of place in the grim tension of his thoughts. Mark risked a glance back, and froze. At the far end of the station, past the rows of plastic chairs and vending machines, a figure stood motionless beneath a flickering light. Tall, pale. The driver. Mark's stomach dropped. The man wasn't looking at him, not directly. His head was tilted up, his hollow eyes fixed on the departure board above Mark's head, as if tracking the 10:15 status. The whispers surged, a single, hissing thread beneath the station's noise. You can't run. Mark turned back to the line, his fingers tightening around the strap of his backpack. The turnstile was 10 people ahead. He could make it. He could. A hand clamped onto his shoulder. Mark whirled hard in his throat and came face to face with a harried-looking woman holding a crying toddler. "Sorry," she muttered, shifting the child to her other hip. "You dropped this." She held out a crumpled train ticket. Mark exhaled, his pulse roaring in his ears. He hadn't dropped anything. The ticket had been secure in his pocket. But he took it anyway, muttering thanks as the woman hurried ahead. When he looked back, the driver was gone. The line moved. 5 people to the turnstile now. Then 4. 3. Mark's breath came faster. The station lights flickered just once, but long enough for him to see it. The driver, standing beside the turnstile now, his hands folded neatly in front of him. Waiting. Mark's steps faltered. The man in front of him, a businessman in a wrinkled suit, glanced back, frowning. "You good?" Mark opened his mouth. No sound came out. The businessman shrugged and stepped through the turnstile. Now it was Mark's turn. The driver didn't move. Didn't speak. Just watched as Mark fumbled for his ticket, his fingers numb. The scanner beeped. Green light. Mark stepped forward and the driver smiled. A small, knowing thing. The whispers screamed. Mark's vision tunneled. The station melted away, the noise, the people, the light, until there was only the turnstile, the platform beyond, and the black sedan idling beside the 10:15 to Albany, with its passenger door already open. The driver's voice was soft, almost gentle. "Last ride." The train whistle blew a long, mournful sound as Mark's reflection in the sedan's window grinned back at him. Black-eyed, hungry, the turnstile clicked, releasing him. And Mark stepped forward. The car's interior was pitch black. Mark's breath came in shallow, uneven gasps, his fingers gripping the leather seat beneath him, or what should have been leather. The texture was wrong. Too slick, too alive, pulsing faintly under his touch like the skin of some massive, sleeping beast. The driver's eyes glowed faintly in the dark. Not the dim reflection of streetlights. Not the eerie gleam of an animal's gaze in headlights. Or a light from within. 2 pinpricks of sickly yellow, floating in the abyss of the front seat, unblinking. Watching. "18." Mark swallowed hard. His throat was too dry, his tongue too heavy. The whispers had fallen silent the moment the car door sealed shut behind him, leaving only the sound of his own ragged breathing and the low, droning hum of the engine, if it was an engine. The sound was too organic, too rhythmic, like the slow, steady beat of a heart. He tried to speak. His lips moved, but no sound came out. The driver's eyes brightened. A click, soft, deliberate, as the glove compartment popped open. Inside, nestled in shadow, was a single object, a Polaroid photograph, its edges curled with age. Mark didn't want to touch it. But his hand moved anyway, fingers closing around the photo as if pulled by strings. The moment his skin made contact, the whispers returned, not in his ears, but in his bones, vibrating through him like a struck chord. The image was blurry at first, the colors washed out. Then slowly it resolved, a black sedan, parked outside a familiar apartment building. His apartment building, and standing beside it, one hand resting on the roof, was Mark. But not as he was now. This version of him was wrong. His posture was too stiff, his limbs too long, his face a smooth, featureless oval save for 2 dark pits where his eyes should be. The whispers surged, a chorus of voices overlapping, merging into a single deafening truth. "You've always been the driver." Mark's reflection in the rearview mirror flickered, his features melting. reforming into the hollow-eyed thing from the photograph. The car's engine, if it was an engine, roared to life. And the 13th ride began. Mark's fingers trembled around the Polaroid, the edges biting into his skin. The image didn't waver. His hollow-eyed doppelganger stared back, frozen in time, one hand resting possessively on the sedan's roof. The car wasn't moving. It wasn't even on a road. The windows framed an endless void, a sea of black so deep it swallowed the feeble glow of the dashboard lights. No streetlights, no stars. Just the abyss stretching in every direction, pressing against the glass like a living thing. The whispers had gone silent again. The only sound was the thump, thump, thump of the engine. No, not an engine. A heartbeat pulsing through the seats, the floor, the very air. Mark's reflection in the rearview mirror flickered again. His pupils dilated, black bleeding into the whites of his eyes, his mouth stretching into a grin too wide for his face. His driver, turned fully in his seat. Not to look at Mark. To look at the road ahead. Except there was no road. Just the void. The speedometer needle twitched, then spun wildly, the numbers blurring past anything a car could reach. The radio crackled to life, no music, no static, just a single, warped voice whispering, "Welcome home." The car lurched forward. Not on wheels, not on anything. It glided, slicing through the darkness like a knife through water, the void parting before it. The whispers surged back, louder now, more coherent, hundreds of voices, all speaking in unison, all saying the same thing: "You remember now." And Mark did. Flashes of memory, not his, never has flooded his mind. Endless rides, countless passengers, 100 versions of himself, all with the same hollow eyes, all whispering the same address. 42 Willowbrook Lane. The car wasn't a car. It was a vessel. A bridge. And he wasn't Mark. Not anymore. The Polaroid crumpled in his grip, the image melting like wax, reforming into something new. A photograph of a man slumped in the back seat, his face pale, his eyes wide with terror. Brady, the passenger. The next Mark. The whispers sang. His driver reached back, his fingers too long, too cold, and pressed a single, clawed digit against Mark's forehead. Time to wake up. The world dissolved. The last thing Mark saw before the darkness took him was his own face in the rearview mirror. Black-eyed, smiling. Finally home. The world reassembled itself in fragments, first the hum of the engine, then the cold press of leather against Mark's skin, and finally the scent of old metal and something faintly sweet, like rotting fruit. He blinked, his vision swimming. The car's interior was the same as before, but the air had changed. Thicker, heavier. The whispers were silent now, replaced by a quiet so absolute it rang in his ears. And then the driver turned. Not a glance in the rearview mirror. Not a tilt of the head. Fully for the first time, Mark saw his face without the distortion of glass or shadow. Pale skin stretched too tight over sharp bones, her lips thin and bloodless, and his mouth had opened, wider than any human jaw should allow, wide enough to split his face in two. Mark's breath caught. The inside of the driver's mouth was wrong, too many teeth, rows upon rows of them, jagged and yellowed, receding into a darkness that had no end. No tongue, no throat, just teeth, and beyond them, something moved. A flicker of shadow, a suggestion of shape, writhing deep inside the driver's gaping maw. The whispers returned, not as voices but as pressure, building inside Mark's skull like a scream he couldn't release. The driver didn't speak, didn't need to. The message was clear in the way his black eyes gleamed, in the way his fingers too long, too many joints curled around the steering wheel. The speedometer needle spun wildly. The windows rattled in their frames. Outside, the void peeled back, revealing a stretch of road Mark knew too well his street, his apartment building, the flickering street lamp where the sedan always waited. But this time the car didn't stop. It accelerated. The buildings blurred. The street lamp burst in a shower of sparks, and the driver's mouth stretched wider, wide enough to swallow the world. Mark's reflection in the rearview mirror grinned back at him, black-eyed, sharp-toothed, hungry. The whispers surged one final time, a chorus of voices merging into a single deafening truth. You were never the passenger. The car hurtled forward, or into the dark, into the teeth, into the end. And Mark laughed. Mark woke with a gasp, his head slamming against the window beside him. His vision swam blurry at first, then sharpening into focus. He was in a car. Not just any car. The black sedan. His stomach lurched. The dashboard lights cast a sickly green glow over the interior, the leather seats cold under his fingers. The engine hummed, too quiet, too steady, like the purr of a predator lying in wait. How did I get here? He didn't remember getting in. Didn't remember anything after what? The memories slipped through his fingers like smoke. The last thing he recalled was standing outside his apartment, the night air biting at his skin, the whispers threading through his thoughts. Then nothing. Now here he was, trapped. Mark grabbed the door handle and yanked. It didn't budge. He tried again, throwing his weight against it, his breath coming in short, panicked bursts. The lock held fast. The window wouldn't roll down. The child safety light glowed mockingly from the panel. The driver hadn't turned, hadn't spoken. Just sat there, hands at 10 and 2, his hollow eyes fixed on the road ahead. Mark's reflection in the window flickered, his pupils dilating, black swallowing green for a heartbeat before snapping back. The whispers stirred, soft as static. You're awake. Finally, Mark's fingers dug into the seat. Where are you taking me? The driver didn't answer. The radio crackled to life, no music, no words, just a low, droning hum that vibrated in Mark's teeth, in his bones. Outside, the world blurred. The street lights stretched into glowing streaks, the buildings warping, melting like wax. The car wasn't speeding. The world was bending around it. Mark's breath fogged in the air. The cold wasn't just in the car anymore, it was inside him, spreading through his veins like ice water. His fingers tingled, then went numb. The whispers grew louder. No more running, no more hiding. The speedometer needle trembled, then spun, the numbers blurring past anything a car could reach. Mark's reflection in the window grinned back at him. Black-eyed, hungry. The driver exhaled a slow, rattling sound, and the 15th ride began in earnest. The driver spoke again, his voice like rusted hinges groaning in the wind. You're mine now. The car lunged forward, not with the mechanical growl of an engine, but with a sound like something alive uncoiling. The world outside the window shattered into fragments of light and shadow, the road dissolving into a tunnel of writhing darkness. Mark's breath caught in his throat. His hands scrabbled at the seatbelt, but the buckle had melted into the leather, fused like flesh. The speedometer needle spun wildly, the numbers blurring into nonsense. The whispers weren't whispers anymore. They were screams, dozens, hundreds layered over each other in a chorus of terror and triumph. Finally, you remember, you're one of us. Mark's reflection in the window wasn't his own. His face stretched, his jaw unhinging like the driver's, his eyes hollow pits of endless black. The dashboard lights flickered, then died. The only illumination came from the driver's eyes, two pinpricks of sickly yellow, burning in the dark. The car accelerated. Faster. Faster, the road ahead split open like a wound, revealing a yawning void beyond a city of twisted spires and streets that curved in on themselves, but shadows moving without bodies to cast them. The driver's hands left the wheel. He turned fully in his seat, his body unfolding, limbs elongating, his suit splitting at the seams to reveal the writhing darkness beneath. His mouth opened, wider. Wider rows of jagged teeth gleamed in the abyssal glow, and beyond them, Mark saw himself, not a reflection, not a trick. Himself standing at the edge of the void, black-eyed and grinning, one hand raised in greeting. The driver's voice was no longer a single sound, it was 1,000 voices, all speaking in unison, all saying the same thing: welcome home. The car plunged into the void. The last thing Mark heard before the darkness swallowed him whole was his own laughter, echoing, endless, hungry. And then silence. The road was empty. The sedan was gone. Somewhere, in the space between spaces, a new driver took the wheel. And the whispers began again. 42 Willowbrook Lane, 42 Willowbrook Lane, the next ride was coming. And it would never, ever end. The back seat was no longer empty. Mark blinked, his vision swimming as the car's interior sharpened into focus. The cold was deeper now, settling into his bones like a second skin. His breath fogged the air in front of him, but the driver didn't seem to notice, didn't seem to care. Then he saw them, the others. Shadows at first, flickering at the edges of his vision. Then solid, real. Figures crowded the back seat, their forms pressed too close, their limbs tangled together like the roots of an old, gnarled tree. Their faces were hollow, not just pale, but empty, their eyes dark pits that stared straight ahead, unblinking. Mark's breath hitched. He tried to recoil, but there was nowhere to go. The figures didn't move, didn't acknowledge him. They just sat there, their stillness more unnerving than any motion. One of them turned its head, slow, deliberate. Its mouth opened, no sound came out. But Mark heard it anyway, a whisper, not in his ears but in his mind, threading through his thoughts like smoke. "You're late." The driver's reflection in the rearview mirror smiled. The radio crackled to life, the static resolving into a chorus of overlapping voices, all whispering the same thing, almost there. Mark's hands trembled in his lap. The figures in the back seat leaned closer, their hollow eyes boring into him. Their mouths moved in unison, their words syncing with the whispers in his skull. "You're one of us. You always have been." The car accelerated. The world outside the windows dissolved into streaks of smeared light, the road stretching, twisting, folding in on itself. The figures in the back seat didn't react. They just watched, waited. Mark's reflection in the window wasn't his own anymore. It was theirs, hollow-eyed, smiling. The driver's voice cut through the static, soft and final. "Last stop." The car lurched forward and the figures reached for Mark, their fingers cold, their touch burning. The last thing he saw before the darkness took him was his own face among them. Black-eyed, endless. Finally home. The car stopped. Mark hadn't noticed it slowing. One moment, the world outside was a blur of smeared lights and warped shadows. The next, the sedan idled at the curb, its engine humming low and steady like a satisfied beast. The driver didn't speak, didn't turn, just sat there, his pale hands resting on the wheel, his hollow eyes fixed straight ahead. Mark's breath fogged in the frigid air. The figures in the back seat had vanished if they'd ever been there at all. The whispers, too, had fallen silent, leaving only the quiet thrum of the engine and the too loud pounding of his own heart. Then he saw it. The house. 42 Willowbrook Lane. His childhood home. Mark's stomach dropped. The two-story house loomed beyond the windshield, its paint peeling, its porch sagging under the weight of years. The windows were dark, the curtains drawn, but the front door stood slightly ajar, as if waiting for him. No, not this place. Not again. He hadn't been back in over a decade. Hadn't wanted to. The memories here were buried deep for a reason. The driver's fingers twitched against the wheel. A silent command. Get out. Mark's hand hovered over the door handle. His reflection in the window flickered, his pupils dilated, his mouth twisting into something that wasn't quite a smile. The whispers stirred, a single thread of sound beneath the silence. You remember. And he did. Flashes of childhood, his mother's voice, sharp with anger. His father's silence, heavy as a closed fist. The way the house had always felt wrong, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. The driver exhaled a slow, rattling sound. The passenger door clicked open. Mark didn't move. The driver's head turned just slightly enough for Mark to see the edge of his grin. Too wide. Too many teeth. Go on, he murmured. They're waiting. Mark's fingers curled into fists. Who? The driver didn't answer. Outside, the porch light flickered on. A shadow moved behind the curtains. Mark's breath hitched. The whispers surged, triumphant. Welcome home. Against every screaming instinct, Mark reached for the door and stepped out. The moment his foot touched the pavement, the car's engine roared to life behind him. He turned, but the sedan was already gone. No taillights, no sound of tires on asphalt. Just the empty street and the house behind him, its door creaking open wider. The whispers were louder now, not in his ears. Inside, Mark turned back to the house and walked forward. The porch steps groaned under his weight. The air smelled of old wood and something faintly metallic, like dried blood. The door swung open fully. The hallway beyond was dark. And at the end of it, a silhouette. Tall, pale, smiling, the whispers sang. Mark stepped inside. The door slammed shut behind him, and the 17th ride began. The moment the door clicked shut, the air inside the house turned to ice. Mark's breath curled in white plumes, his fingers numb where they gripped the doorframe. The hallway stretched before him, swallowed by shadows so thick they seemed to pulse. The silhouette at the end, tall, pale, smiling, had vanished. But the whispers remained. They slithered through the air, threading between the peeling wallpaper and the warped floorboards, soft as static but deafening in the silence. "It's your home. You never left." Mark took a step forward. The floor groaned beneath him, the sound too loud, too alive. The house was frozen in time. Dust motes hung suspended in the stale air. A coffee cup sat half full on the side table, its contents long since congealed. A child's drawing crude stick figures under a crayon sun was still pinned to the wall, the paper yellowed with age. Or his drawing. His childhood. The whispers surged, a chorus of voices overlapping, merging into a single guttural truth. You remember, and he did. Flashes of memory, his mother's scream from the kitchen, the sound of shattering glass, his father's silence as he walked upstairs, his hands stained red. The way the house had breathed that night, the walls creaking like ribs around a failing heart. Mark's reflection in the hallway mirror flickered, his pupils dilated, black swallowing green, his mouth stretching into something that wasn't quite a smile. The whispers laughed. A floorboard creaked upstairs. Mark's head snapped up. The staircase loomed at the end of the hall, the steps sagging, the banister splintered with age. Something moved in the darkness above. A shadow. No, a hand. Pale. Too long. Fingers curled over the top step like a spider testing its web. Mark's pulse roared in his ears. The whispers crescendoed, screaming now, a cacophony of voices that weren't voices at all but memories, things he'd buried, things he'd never wanted to see again. The hand flexed, then another joined it. And another. Dozens of them, sliding into view, gripping the stairway, the walls, the ceiling. The driver's voice cut through the chaos, soft and final. Come home. The hands pulled. The house shuddered. The walls bent inward, the floorboards splintering as something enormous, something hungry, dragged itself down the stairs. Mark's legs gave out. The whispers screamed. And the 18th ride began. Mark's fingers dug into the peeling wallpaper as he staggered back, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The hands, too many, too long, scraped against the stairs, pulling something unseen into the hallway. The air thickened, the scent of rust and damp wood choking him. A whisper brushed against his ear, closer than the others, almost intimate. You were always here. The house groaned. The walls pulsed like living flesh, the ceiling sagging under an impossible weight. Shadows pooled in the corners, writhing, forming shapes that almost looked human. Almost. Mark's reflection in the hallway mirror was gone. In its place, a child stared back, himself at 8 years old, his eyes wide with terror, his hands pressed against the glass. Help me, the reflection mouthed. Then a sound from upstairs. A thud. Then another. Something heavy being dragged. The whispers surged, a chorus of voices screaming in unison. Look. Mark's head snapped up. At the top of the stairs, a figure stood silhouetted against the dim light, tall, hunched, its limbs too thin, its fingers brushing the ceiling. Not the driver. Something worse. The figure took a step forward, its joints popping with each movement. The wood beneath it blackened, curling like paper in a flame. Mark's throat locked. He knew that silhouette. Knew the way it moved, the way it breathed. Or his father, but not as he'd been in life. This version was wrong. Its face was a smudge of shadow, its mouth a jagged gash stretching ear to ear. And its eyes, black, endless, just like the driver's. The whispers coiled around Mark, slithering up his legs, his torso, his neck, until he could barely breathe. You remember now, you saw what he did. The figure descended, each step making the house shudder. The temperature plummeted, frost spreading across the walls in jagged, claw-like patterns. Mark's legs refused to move. His reflection in the mirror flickered, his child's self's face twisting in horror as the figure drew closer. Then, A sound from the kitchen. A click. The flicker of a lighter. Mark's head turned. His mother stood in the doorway, her face gaunt, her eyes hollow. A cigarette dangled from her lips, the ember glowing in the dark. She smiled. Too wide, too many teeth. "Welcome home, baby," she murmured. The whisper screamed. The figure on the stairs lunged, and the world dissolved into static. The last thing Mark saw before the darkness took him was his own face in the mirror, black-eyed, grinning, finally remembering. The car waited outside. The driver stood beside it, door open. And the 18th ride began in earnest. The car was no longer a car. Mark blinked, his vision swimming as the interior shifted around him, the leather seats softening into something slick and membranous. The dashboard lights elongating into glowing veins beneath the surface. The air smelled of wet earth and something metallic, like blood pooling in old soil. The driver turned, not just his head. His body twisted in the seat, his spine bending in places no human spine should bend, his limbs unfolding like the legs of a spider. His face already too pale, too hollow stretched, the skin splitting at the seams to reveal the writhing darkness beneath. Too many eyes blinked open in the void where his features had been. Black. Hungry Mark's breath hitched. The whispers had gone silent, not out of absence but in anticipation. The air itself held its breath. The driver's mouth, if it could still be called a mouth, parted. No sound came out, but Mark heard it anyway. A voice, not in his ears but in his bones, vibrating through him like the hum of a tuning fork struck against his spine. "You see me now." The car lurched forward. Not on wheels. Not on anything. It moved, the world outside the windows dissolving into streaks of smeared color, the road peeling back like flesh to reveal the writhing abyss beneath. Mark's reflection in the window wasn't his own. It was the driver's, hollow-eyed, endless. The speedometer needle spun wildly, the numbers blurring past comprehension. The radio crackled to life, no static, no music, just a chorus of voices screaming in unison, "You are us." The driver's form rippled, his edges blurring, his shape dissolving into something vast and shifting, a thing of shadow and teeth and too many eyes. Mark's hands claws now curled into the seat beneath him. The cold wasn't cold anymore. It was home. The car hurtled forward, the abyss opening wide to swallow it whole. And the 19th ride began, not as passenger, not as victim, but as something more. The whispers sang. Mark laughed, and the road stretched on forever. Mark's hands shot out, fingers curling into fists as he lunged at the driver. His knuckles connected with the pale, hollow face and passed straight through like smoke. The impact never came. No resistance. No bone. Just a rush of icy air as his arm plunged into the driver's skull, the sensation like dipping his hand into freezing water. Mark gasped, yanking back. His fingers tingled, numb as if frostbitten. The driver didn't react, didn't flinch. His hollow eyes remained fixed ahead, his grin widening as the car's speedometer needle trembled, then spun past numbers no vehicle could reach. The whispers roared, a chorus of voices overlapping in his skull. "You can't fight what you are." Mark's reflection in the window flickered, his pupils swallowing the green of his irises, his mouth stretching too wide. The road outside dissolved. The street lights warped into streaks of smeared light, the asphalt rippling like water as the sedan hurtled through the void. Mark grabbed for the door handle again. It melted under his touch, the metal softening like wax before reforming into something slick and pulsating. The driver exhaled a sound like wind through a graveyard. Almost there. The dashboard lights flickered, then died. The only illumination came from the driver's eyes, twin voids in the dark, glowing faintly with a light that wasn't light at all. Mark's breath fogged in the air, the cold so deep it burned. His hands trembled in his lap, his skin taking on a sickly pallor, the veins beneath turning black. The whispers softened, almost gentle now. "You've always been the car." The radio crackled to life. A single, warped voice whispered, "Welcome home." The sedan plunged into the abyss, and Mark stopped fighting. The driver absorbed Mark into the darkness. One moment, Mark was their flesh and bone, breath ragged, fingers clawing at the seat, and the next he wasn't. His edges blurred, his form dissolving like ink in water, the darkness of the car wallowing him whole. The whispers went silent. For the first time in 20 rides, there was no sound, no static, no screaming. Just the quiet hum of the engine, if it could still be called an engine, and the pulse of something vast and ancient beneath the surface. The driver's grin stretched wider, his hollow eyes reflecting nothing. No passenger, no road, just the endless dark. The speedometer needle settled. The car slowed. Outside the windows, the void peeled back, revealing a familiar street, neon lights reflecting off rain-slicked pavement, the hum of the city distant but alive. Or curb. An apartment building. 42 Willowbrook Lane. The driver's fingers pale, too long drummed against the wheel. Waiting. The passenger door clicked open. A figure stumbled toward the car, shoulders hunched against the rain, exhaustion weighing his steps. A man, late 20s, dark circles under his eyes. The driver's lips parted. Destination confirmed. The man slid into the back seat, barely glancing up as the door shut behind him. The whispers began again, soft at first, then louder, hungrier. The driver met the man's gaze in the rearview mirror. Pale, unblinking eyes locked onto his. The man shivered. The car pulled away from the curb, and the 20th ride began. The app glitched the moment the request went through. Lena frowned at her phone, thumbing the screen as the rideshare interface flickered once, twice before stabilizing. The confirmation message popped up, stark white against the dark mode background. Driver, H. The Smith. Vehicle, black sedan. ETA, 2 minutes. She exhaled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. The bar's neon sign buzzed overhead, casting a sickly pink glow over the rain-slicked pavement. Her shift had ended an hour ago, but the last bus had come and gone, leaving her stranded in the part of town where cabs didn't linger. The rideshare was her only option. A car turned onto the street, its headlights cutting through the drizzle. Lena squinted. Black sedan, no plates. Her stomach twisted. The car rolled to a stop in front of her, the passenger window sliding down with a quiet hum. The interior was dark, the dashboard lights casting a faint green glow over the driver's hands, pale, fingers too long, gripping the wheel at 10 and 2. Lena? The driver's voice was flat, hollow, like a recording played through old speakers. She hesitated. Yeah, that's me. The door locks clicked open. Lena reached for the handle, then paused. Something was off. The app hadn't given her the driver's name until after the ride was confirmed. And yet he'd known hers. The rain pattered against her shoulders, soaking through her thin jacket. The cold seeped into her bones, urging her to move, to get in, to get out of the downpour. Against her better judgment, she pulled the door open and slid inside. The air in the car was frigid, the kind of cold that settled deep, like the AC had been running for hours in the dead of winter. The seats were leather, smooth under her fingers, but something about the texture made her skin crawl. Too soft, too alive. The door shut behind her with a quiet thud. Lena glanced at the driver through the rear-view mirror and froze. His eyes were fixed on her, not glancing, not checking, staring pale, unblinking, the pupils too wide, too black, swallowing the dim light. Lena's breath hitched. Hey, you good?" The driver didn't respond, just held her gaze, his lips parting slightly, not a smile, not a frown, just an empty, slack expression. The car pulled away from the curb, gliding through the rain-soaked streets with unnatural smoothness. The radio was off, no music, no static. Just the rhythmic thump of the windshield wipers and the too quiet hum of the engine. Lena fumbled for her phone, thumbing open the rideshare app. The screen flickered, the interface glitching, her trip details dissolving into pixels before reappearing. No driver name, no license plate, no record of the ride at all. Her pulse spiked. "Hey, I think there's something wrong with the app. It's not showing." The driver's hand twitched on the wheel. A whisper curled against Lena's ear, soft as static. "It never does," she jerked back, pressing herself against the door. What the hell was that? The driver didn't react, just watched her through the mirror, his hollow eyes unblinking. The street lights outside worked, their glow stretching into smeared streaks of color as the car accelerated. The speedometer needle climbed -40, 50, 60, but the sedan didn't shake, didn't rattle. It moved like it wasn't touching the road at all. Lena's fingers closed around the door handle. It didn't budge. The child safety light glowed mockingly from the panel. The whispers returned, louder now, threading through the silence like smoke. "You can't leave, not anymore." Lena's reflection in the window flickered, her pupils dilating, black bleeding into the green of her irises for a fraction of a second before snapping back. The driver's lips curled. Not a smile. A revelation. The car hurtled forward, the world outside dissolving into static. And the 21st ride began. The car pulled away from the curb, its newest passenger unaware of what was coming. Lena's fingers tapped nervously against her phone screen, the glow illuminating her face in the dark. The app had frozen completely now, no route, no driver info, just a blank map and the spinning icon of a lost GPS signal. She glanced up, meeting the driver's gaze in the rearview mirror. Those eyes, hollow, hungry. A whisper curled against her ear, soft and insistent. "You've always been ours." The speedometer needle climbed. The world outside the windows blurred. And the cycle began again. The whispers laughed. And somewhere, in the space between spaces, Mark smiled. The journal was tucked beneath the floorboards of the abandoned house, its leather cover cracked with age. Mark's fingers trembled as he pried it open, the pages brittle under his touch. The handwriting was frantic, ink smeared in places, letters pressed so hard they tore through the paper. October 12th, it started with a cold. Mark's breath fogged in the stale air of the empty house as he read. The entries were disjointed, The timeline fractured, but the pattern was unmistakable. The driver never speaks, just watches me in the mirror. The app says the ride never happened. No receipt, no record. When I try to take a picture, my phone glitches. He knows, he always knows. A chill skittered down Mark's spine. He flipped the page. October 15th, the whispers started last night. Not in the car, in my apartment. I turned up the heat, but the cold won't leave. It's inside me now. I see my reflection in the mirror sometimes. In my eyes, the sentence ended abruptly, the next line scribbled over in jagged strokes, as if the writer had tried to claw the words off the page. Mark's pulse hammered in his throat. He knew that fear. Knew that certainty, the slow, creeping realization that the rules of the world no longer applied. The next entry was shorter. October 17th, he's outside again. The car is always there now, waiting. I can't sleep. The whispers are louder, but they say the same thing, over and over. You're almost home. A rust-colored stain marred the corner of the page, old blood flaking away at the edges. Mark turned to the final entry. October 19th, I remember now. The driver isn't taking me anywhere. He's waking me up. The cold isn't the car. It's me. It's always been me. The next ride is my last. I can feel it. When he comes, I won't fight it anymore. The rest of the pages were blank, except for the very last one. A single line, written in a hand that wasn't human, letters too precise, too sharp, as if carved into the paper by something with too many joints. Welcome home, Mark. The journal slipped from his fingers, hitting the floor with a thud that echoed through the empty house. Outside, an engine purred to life. Mark didn't have to look to know the black sedan was idling at the curb, waiting. The whispers stirred, soft as static. You're next. And for the first time, Mark didn't run. The notebook was water-stained and warped, hidden beneath a loose floorboard in the back room of the abandoned gas station. Mark's fingers shook as he pried it open, the pages sticking together like old skin. The handwriting was erratic, ink blotted with what might have been tears, words trailing off mid-sentence as if the writer had been interrupted. November 3rd, I don't know how he finds me. I changed my phone, deleted the app. But the car is always there when I walk out of work. Black sedan, no plates. The driver never blinks. Mark's breath hitched. The entries were jagged, frantic, the timeline collapsing in on itself like a dying star. November 5th, the whispers aren't just in the car anymore. They're in my apartment, under my bed, or inside my fucking teeth. I hear them when I try to sleep. They say the same thing every time: you belong to us. A cold sweat prickled down Mark's spine. He knew this terror, knew the way it gnawed at the edges of sanity, leaving only frayed nerves and sleepless nights. The next page was worse. November 7th, I saw my reflection in the diner window tonight. Just for a second. My eyes were black. Not dark, endless, like his. I smashed the mirror when I got home. The glass wouldn't break at first. It just bent, like it was laughing at me. A rust-colored fingerprint smudged the margin. Mark didn't need to guess what it was. He turned the page. The writing deteriorated further, letters slanting violently, sentences devolving into fragments. November 9th, he doesn't wait for me to call anymore. The car just appears. The locks click open on their own. The cold is inside me now. I can feel it moving, growing. The whispers say I'm almost ready. The final entry was barely legible, scrawled in a hand that no longer looked human, too sharp, too precise, the ink sinking into the paper like scars. November 11th, he's here. Nothing else. No explanation, no plea for help. Just those 2 words, and then empty pages. Mark's throat tightened. Outside, the hum of an engine cut through the silence. He didn't look up, didn't need to. The black sedan would be idling at the curb. The driver would be watching, and the whispers, they were already singing. You're next. Mark closed the notebook. And this time he didn't run. The paper was crumpled, shoved into the hollow space behind a loose brick in the alley where the black sedan had last been seen. The edges were singed, as if someone had tried to burn it but lost their nerve. The handwriting was frantic letters slanting wildly, ink smeared by what might have been sweat or tears. December 1st, I don't know how much time I have left. The whispers are too loud now. They don't just talk, they scream. I can't sleep, can't think. Every mirror I pass shows me his face. Not the driver's, mine, but wrong. Black-eyed, smiling. Mark's fingers trembled as he smoothed the paper against his thigh. The words blurred in and out of focus, the writer's panic bleeding through every stroke of the pen. December 3rd, the cold isn't just in the car anymore. It's in my bones. I turn the heat up to 90 and still my breath fogs in the air. The frost on the windows forms words when I'm not looking. Come home. You belong here. I scraped it off with a knife. It grew back by morning. A stain. Darkened the corner of the page, not rust this time, but something darker, thicker. Mark's stomach turned. December 5th, I found the others, their journals, their notes, all saying the same thing. We're not the first. The car has been doing this for years. Decades. Maybe longer. The driver isn't a man. He's something else. Something that wears faces like coats. The writing dissolved into scribbles, then resumed halfway down the page, the letters jagged, desperate. December 7th, he doesn't need the app anymore. The car comes when it wants. The doors lock from the inside. Last night I tried to run, made it 3 blocks before I turned a corner and the sedan was already there, idling, door open. The driver wasn't in the front seat. He was in the back, smiling, waiting. The final lines were nearly illegible, the pen digging so deep it tore the paper in places. December 9th, I remember now. The driver isn't taking me anywhere. He's reminding me, the cold isn't the car. It's me. It's always been me. The next ride is my last. I can feel it in my teeth, in my veins. When he comes, I won't the sentence ended mid-word. The rest of the page was blank, except for a single line at the very bottom, written in a hand that wasn't human, letters too precise, too sharp, as if carved into the paper by something with too many joints. See you soon. Mark. The paper slipped from his fingers, fluttering to the damp pavement. Behind him, an engine purred to life. Mark didn't turn. He didn't need to. The whispers were already singing. The car was already waiting, and this time he would get in. The post appeared at 3:17 a.m. on a forum buried deep in the dark web, its title innocuous, cursed code. The truth behind Ridex. Mark's fingers hovered over the keyboard. his screen's blue glow the only light in his apartment. He'd spent weeks chasing leads, whispers of other victims, fragments of journals, the growing certainty that the black sedan had been hunting long before it found him. But this was different. The post was anonymous, its text fragmented, as if the writer had been interrupted mid-thought. If you're reading this, you've seen him. The driver. The one who doesn't blink. You think it's a glitch. A bug. It's not. RideX was built on stolen code, not from another app, but from somewhere else. The original dev team found it in the ruins of an old mainframe data that shouldn't exist. Patterns that didn't match any language. They thought it was encrypted. It wasn't. It was a call. The app was just the door. The driver was already waiting on the other side. They tried to shut it down. Too late. The code rewrote itself. Spread. Now it's in every update, every patch, hiding in the spaces between lines. It doesn't need servers. It doesn't need phones. It just needs passengers. Deleting the app won't save you. He remembers every ride, every face, and he's coming for them all. Mark's breath fogged in the cold air. The post ended there, no replies, no follow-ups. Just a single, chilling addendum at the bottom, P.S. Check your reflection. If your eyes flicker, it's already too late. The screen flickered, just once, a fraction of a second, but long enough for Mark to see it as reflection in the darkened monitor, pupils swallowing the green of his irises before snapping back. The whispers stirred, soft as static. You knew, you always knew. Outside, an engine purred to life. Mark didn't look up. He didn't need to. The sedan would be idling at the curb. The driver would be watching, and the code, the cursed, hungry code, it was already running. Mark exhaled. The choice was made. Mark's fingers uncurled from the ruined newspaper. He stood and walked toward the stairs. The road stretched on forever, and the car was waiting. The car never stopped. Mark knew that now. It was a living thing, an entity that wore the shape of steel and leather, its true form writhing beneath the surface like shadows in a storm. The driver wasn't a man. He never had been. He was a vessel, a skin stretched over something older, hungrier. And now, so was Mark. The whispers weren't whispers anymore. They were his voice, his thoughts, threaded through with the chorus of those who had come before. You belong here. You always have. The sedan glided through the city streets, the world outside the windows warping at the edges, buildings stretching, streetlights flickering, like reality bending to the will of the thing behind the wheel. Mark sat in the driver's seat now. His hands pale, two long fingers rested at 10 and 2. The wheel was cold beneath his touch, the leather groaning like living flesh. The rearview mirror reflected an empty backseat, but he knew better. They were there, the passengers, the taken. The ones who had ridden before him, their forms dissolved into the static that hummed through the car's speakers, their voices whispering from the frost that crept across the glass. A flicker of movement in the mirror. Raise a face, not his, a woman's, hollow-eyed, lips parted in a silent scream. Lena. Then another. A man with a jagged scar pulsing at his throat. Ethan. Odess. Arisi. One by one they appeared, their faces melting together, their voices merging into the chorus that lived inside Mark's skull. You're ours now. You'll never leave. The car slowed. A curb. A street lamp. A figure standing in the rain, shoulders hunched, phone in hand. A new passenger. Mark's lips curled. Not a smile. Something worse. A reflex. An inevitability. The locks clicked open. The door swung wide. The man hesitated, peering into the dark interior. Hey, you my ride? Mark didn't answer. He didn't need to. The whispers did it for him. Destination confirmed. The man slid into the back seat, oblivious to the frost already creeping up his sleeves, to the shadows coiling around his ankles like serpents. The door shut. The car pulled away. And the cycle began again. Mark's reflection in the rearview mirror grinned back at him, black-eyed, endless, finally home. The road stretched on forever, and the car never stopped. The rain fell in sheets, turning the city into a mist of neon and shadow. Another night, another passenger. The app pinged on Mark's phone, request accepted. 2 minutes away, he barely glanced at the name. It didn't matter. None of them did. The black sedan rolled to a stop at the curb, its wipers dragging sluggishly across the windshield. The passenger, a woman in a soaked trench coat, yanked the door open and collapsed into the back seat with a huff. God, finally, she muttered, shaking water from her sleeves. I've been waiting 20 minutes. The app kept glitching. Mark didn't respond. His hands tightened on the wheel, knuckles white as bone. The rearview mirror reflected her face, round, flushed, utterly ordinary, but beneath the surface, he could see it. The way her pupils dilated just a fraction too wide when she met his gaze. The way the shadows in the car seemed to cling to her a little longer than they should. She shivered. Jesus, it's freezing in here. Can you turn up the heat? Mark exhaled. His breath didn't fog. The woman frowned, leaning forward. Hello? You okay? The app on her phone glitched. The screen flickered once, twice before going black. When it rebooted, the ride history was empty. No record, no receipt. Her breath hitched. Mark turned his head, slow, deliberate. The woman recoiled. His eyes weren't human anymore. Pale, unblinking. Endless, the whispers surged, a chorus of voices she couldn't hear, not yet. Almost home. The locks clicked shut. The car pulled away from the curb. And the last ride began. The woman in the trench coat thrashed against the seat, her breath coming in sharp, panicked gasps. The child's safety light glowed mockingly as she clawed at the door handle, her fingers slipping on the frost-slick metal. Mark watched her from the rearview mirror. No, not Mark. Not anymore. His face was a pale mask now, his pupils black voids that drank in the dim light. His lips curled, not in a smile, but in something deeper. Hunger. The car wasn't moving on the road. Not really. The world outside the windows had dissolved into streaks of smeared color, the city melting like wax under a flame. The woman's screams were muffled, as if the sedan itself swallowed sound. Mark, the driver, inhaled. The cold wasn't just in the air anymore. It was in her. He could see it spreading through her veins like ink in water, her skin taking on a sickly pallor, her breath fogging in thick, visible plumes despite the car's unnatural warmth. The whisper stirred, not in his ears but in hers. You're almost there, you'll see. Her head snapped up, eyes wild. What was that? Mark didn't answer. Oh, his reflection in the window beside her flickered his face, elongating, his mouth splitting at the seams to reveal rows of jagged teeth. She recoiled, pressing herself against the opposite door. Too late. The frost on the glass thickened, forming words she couldn't read but felt in the marrow of her bones. Welcome home. The car hit a bump, except there was no road. No ground, just the endless dark. And then ahead, a light. The woman's breath hitched. The light wasn't a street lamp or a tunnel. It was a doorway, yawning open at the end of a stretch of road that shouldn't exist. Mark's grip on the wheel tightened. The whispers crescendoed, a chorus of voices screaming in unison. Last stop, the woman turned to him, her eyes wide, her lips parting in a silent plea. But Mark wasn't looking at her. He was looking past her, at the back seat, at the figures that hadn't been there before, hollow-eyed, smiling, waiting. Her reflection in the window flickered, her pupils swallowing the color of her irises, her mouth stretching into something that wasn't quite a grin. The car plunged into the light. The woman's scream was the last human sound she would ever make. And when the darkness swallowed her whole, Mark exhaled. The cold settled deeper into his bones. The whispers laughed, and the car rolled on. Forever.